Hello aviators, I'm here in the Midwest. I'm on my way to Oshkosh 2025 and I want to let you all know that we have an amazing show special. For the next 2 weeks you can be entered to win a free iPad, and that comes with the Ground School app loaded for life. To be entered to win, all you have to do is start a free 2-week trial. Use the link in the description here. If you're already a paying sub, you're automatically entered to win. And as I go up to the show here, I want to publish a conversation that I recently had with Jeff Simon from Social Flight and Approach Aviation. Jeff's a lot of things, but a couple of those are he's an AMP and he's also an IA. He's a mechanic. And he has a unique insight into how the electrical system in some engines can actually affect the engine operation. In some cases, losing your electrical could completely grenade your entire engine. This is not something that we often hear. So after that recent Cirrus accident where the pilot was reporting electrical difficulties and then continued to the destination, and then lost the engine, Jeff called me. Now, we're not saying we know what happened in that case, but it is a great opportunity to discuss what Jeff is going to discuss in this podcast. And that is, if you're a Cirrus owner, you absolutely have to be asking your mechanic. Don't assume they know. You have to ask them to check the alternator coupling. There is a service bulletin on this, but it's optional. And secondly, if you have an electrical issue, land as soon as practical. Jeff's going to explain why this is true in Continental engines. Any aircraft using the IO-550 and other Continental models are subject to geared alternators, which, if they fail, could potentially grenade the entire engine. So this is important information to get out. This is not something we often hear, and this is Jeff Simon. And you actually you called me the other day to talk a little bit about this recent Cirrus accident, and just a quick overview for people that hadn't seen this, because I was one of those people that hadn't seen it. Juan Brown did a fantastic breakdown of it, which you pointed me to, and I saw. But the idea essentially in what we know so far about that accident is that there was some combination of electrical issue and engine issue. And normally, and like Juan said in his video, those two worlds shouldn't be connected, right? We learned that from day one when we teach people how to fly. We talk about the magnetos being your ignition system in the engine and how you could turn off the master switch and that'll have no effect on the engine. But you were telling me that this combination of issues and this recent accident, well, I'll let you really describe it, but it may be the case that these two things are related or could be related. Can you tell us a little bit about your concerns there?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I want to really, really emphasize, one of the things I know that you, Jason, pride yourself on, I do as well, is we're not part of the, kind of the craziness out on the internet the minute that an aircraft goes down somewhere, whether it's private or commercial, and just jumping on saying, we know what happened. That's not the case here, where I'm trying to say, oh, we know what happened. But I will say that you have this scenario, as you described, with Cirrus, with a pilot that had his family on board, flying up the coast from of Florida, reporting that we hear, you can hear the audio, reporting that he was having problems with radios, implying something going on that could be electrical, and then later something that involves an engine failure, and ultimately tragedy for that flight. And that got my attention because for quite some time, I've been one of the let's say, crusades that I've been on to educate people about is how critical it is to understand and properly maintain and operate an engine that uses a gear-driven alternator. And I'll explain that to you, but that is a situation that can cause and can connect these worlds that, as you mentioned, we're taught from the beginning as pilots, it doesn't work that way. We always tell passengers, right? Like, oh, we don't even need electrical power for this engine to run. True. But there is a connection between the two.
Well, let's dive in there, because that's news to me. And I, even watching that Juan Brown video, it's like there's a point where he points out the magnetos and he's like, okay, well, there you have your redundant electrical. There really should be no swords crossed here. So what is it about the geared alternator? And you're specifically talking about a geared alternator system in the Continental engines, right? The IO-550s that are installed on the Cirrus.
Yeah. So if you want to show, there's an image there that'll first show you an actual Continental engine. This happens to be a similar one to what would be on a Cirrus here. And you can see that when you're dealing with a lot of other engines, maybe in Cessnas, Lycomings, things like that, you're often dealing with a belt-driven alternator. That alternator is, because of a belt, is very disconnected from the engine, let's say. Loosely connected might be a way of putting it. And there are downsides to that, right? Where brackets fail and belts fail and all sorts of stuff. The Continental engine design is really, I believe, very, very eloquent. I happen to love it. And the alternators, that black item you see right up front, it's directly mounted to the engine case. It is made part of the engine. And I'll switch real quick to a different image to show you how this translates. But there's a cutaway I have, which I think is really fascinating. I'd like to show this image. So this shows with a cutaway. This particular image is courtesy of Ram Aircraft in a service bulletin I'll show you that they released. You can see, obviously, the case is cut open, but this is how this engages with the engine. It comes in, and then you see this component with this red or orange elastomer material and a gear, and it is directly engaged. This is what we mean by a gear-driven alternator. And that piece there is called an alternator coupling. I have one right here in front of me. This is an alternator coupling. And the alternator coupling itself is a pretty amazing, cool device, because on one hand, at a very simplistic level, you can think of it as a safety clutch. If the alternator were to jam, then this material would spin. It doesn't actually shear, it spins in a cup and allows the engine to continue even though that alternator is jammed. At another level, it does a whole bunch of other jobs, and it actually cushions the power pulses from the alternator. It cushions in reverse the electrical draw, like when you turn on and you draw a lot of like putting gear down or even turning landing lights on, you get a draw that actually puts torque the other way into the engine. And all of this is all managed by this little simple coupling that's here. Now, in a perfect world, or in a good world, I'd say, of the world of proper maintenance and operation, there's two principles which are so important. One is you always need to make sure that that coupling is installed properly, because it can be tricky, and you have to inspect it. So anytime the alternator comes off, it should be inspected. There's recommendations of like 400 hours, things like that, as to when it should be inspected, but it has to be inspected. It is a critical component, and you literally are supposed to sit there and essentially spin it and measure the torque of what is its breakaway torque. Is it working? Is it reaching is it doing exactly what it needs to do in order to work? And is it not deteriorated and is a good condition? So that's the maintenance side, right? Install it properly, maintain it properly. And then the second half of the equation is to understand it as a pilot. And as a pilot, the idea is if you lose your alternator, meaning the number one alternator we've got here in this image, this geared alternator, because sometimes people have backup ones. If you lose this, as a pilot, you're in the cockpit, you're not inside the engine. You don't know what failed. You don't know how it failed. And so you need to land. That is an emergency. In a geared engine, I want to be really clear about this. Losing your alternator is an emergency. You land the aircraft as soon as safely practicable, period. And too many people, I think, don't understand that. And they feel that if they have a backup alternator, which is Cirrus does have. If they have, some other thing, they can, if it's VFR, they can continue their flight to wherever they wanted to go. And the problem with that is you don't know what failed. And if it is the coupling that is starting to fail in there, that can catastrophically come apart. The first symptom might be losing your electrical power, and the second symptom will be losing your engine.
Can we talk about that? Okay, so looking at this image, are we looking on the left side here? Is this the spinner?
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at the very front of the engine here. And you were saying it's easy to see how these two pieces fit together mechanically, right? Like the teeth just grab onto each other and there you go. But I'm imagining the spinner is spinning, like the speed of the propeller. Yep. So the alternator coupling is always spinning as well. Is that that's just like the same as driving it with a belt, only it's driving it with a gear?
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And
let's pause there for a second, because when you think of the function of a belt, it does two things, right? One, it connects the two so they both spin, as you just mentioned. But it does another function, and that is because it's a essentially rubber belt. It also does what I said earlier. It does that kind of cushioning. If you really looked at it, it would sort of have flex to between the two, and that's an important function that you're seeing this orange elastomer that's part of this do.
Yeah. Now, real quick, also to inspect this, then you'd have to take the alternator off the engine, right? You'd have to, and pull it out and look at what you're saying is look at the integrity of those teeth on the alternator, look at whatever spin
and
tolerance
measure its slippage.
Okay. And then you put it back on. Now, what could happen in theory? Like when, you made a comment to me the other day that, hey man, if this thing breaks, this could grenade your engine.
Correct.
What does that look like? What happens? Those teeth break off, or?
Well, so here's the challenge that there's many times there's things in aviation where the industry itself, the manufacturers, the overhaulers, everybody keeps trying to tell mechanics everywhere, hey guys, like there's a right way to do this, and you may not, for some reason, the word's not getting out there well. And this has always been a problem with alternators and alternator couplings. There are several service bulletins out on the market. And I'm going to share a different document right now with you that shows you an example of what, again, Continental has a service bulletin, Ram has a service bulletin, and it's pretty important stuff. And for some reason, I can't easily explain to you the kind of world of all the mechanics out there just don't seem to be getting the message that two things. Number one, this is a thing that has to be installed, a coupling that has to be installed very, very specifically. It has to be installed with a certain torque. One of the things that's really, really important here, and I can also put on the screen, there's what's called a thrust washer. It is a washer that has two sides. That's a bimetallic washer. One side of it is copper, and one side of it is regular steel. And that's because it's a bearing surface, because this thing's always, like we said, flexing in service. And so number one, it's got to be installed right, and mechanics are not installing it right. They're just sticking it on. I've had mechanics. I saw an engine that came apart completely, got destroyed. And in having a discussion with mechanics, said to him, what direction did you have the bimetallic washer installed? And literally was told, I didn't know that washer's directional. I mean, so this isn't acceptable.
And this is for anybody that's flying an aircraft that's equipped with a Continental IO-550. You're saying that the Lycoming engines are not designed.
Yeah, but it's not just a 550. It's a 550. It's the 520. It's the 360. There's any geared alternator.
Okay, so any geared alternator, and that's the sort of thesis we're going on here. That's our hypothesis, or that's your statement, really, is that any geared alternator, there is a connection between the electrical system and the engine system, the integrity of those two things, in that if the gears break on the alternator, it will cause engine issues, if not total engine failure.
If you're talking about a system that's closed, and I'm not even really speaking for me as Jeff Simon in this case. What I'm saying is, and again, you can pull up on the screen the image that I'm sharing at the moment, or that image from RAM. There is a service bulletin from Continental. There are service bulletins from Hartzell. This isn't like me coming out there and saying, hey, there's a theory that I've got. This is the industry putting publications out there that say, guys, we've got a problem. You need to know how to install this. You need to know how to inspect it. That's why we do service bulletins. This is not an issue for an airworthiness directive. This part isn't the problem. This is education. We have to get the word out there. And so if it isn't installed correctly, it can literally start to wobble and destroy itself. And that what will happen, actually, it's not so much teeth failing. What will actually happen is it'll literally come off the shaft. Like this thing in my hands that is heavy, this thing is heavy, can go flying into your engine right where your crank, right where your connecting rods are. Like your engine will just blow up. It's a big deal if you do bad maintenance on this, basically.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I don't recall. I've gone through like the Cirrus factory training. I've gone through twice, but you just don't hear this from a pilot's perspective. You don't hear that, like the situation we saw in that recent Cirrus accident. And again, like you said, we're not saying we know what happened, but we did hear the pilot talk about a radio issue continually, announcing to people up there, let them know we're having radio issues. We may not have a radio when we get there. And then all of a sudden there's an engine failure.
Exactly.
So even if without speculating what happened in that particular accident, what you're saying is these two things are related, or can be related.
They are. Well, look, like you obviously with the things that you teach. When one of the things that struck me as I was even before you get to this side of it is, this is a pilot that made several radio calls that all about having radio problems and that it was getting worse. He never said anything about an electrical problem. And yet what I always remember being taught, and certainly what I know as a mechanic, is radios are the first things that go if you're having an electrical problem. Like that may be where you actually need to look.
Yeah, interesting.
And therefore, I look at that and I say, anyone who really believes these things in a geared engine are completely unrelated needs to be educated. Because if you've got an electrical problem, again, like we said in the beginning, if you had an electrical problem in an aircraft with a geared alternator, you get that plane on the ground. Now, there's some other things. Obviously, this is something I've been on a mission of for years at this point. And one of the things that I've done really just to try to help people and improve safety is when you talk about inspecting it, the idea of how to inspect it is, again, you can take down the image. I'll hold this up, but you have this coupling, and they tell you in the maintenance manual, hey, you need to hold the base of it, and then you need to make a tool. They tell you to like weld up a tool, like make a tool that grabs these gears and then turn them, and make sure they're turning at the right torque and that everything's working. Because if it's turning at too low a torque, then it means your alternator's slipping, and then you're not getting power, your proper power rating. So if you, by the way, have you think you got an alternator problem, you need to check this thing first before you send off your alternator. But you've got that. So they tell you to check that. And it's not easy to do. So what I did with my other company, Approach Aviation, is actually make a tool that allows you to grip the base of that coupling while it's on the alternator, however you want to do that, and then has a socket that goes right on. And then when it's right on in place here, like there, allows you to then take a 3/8 inch wrench torque, and you use a beam torque wrench and you measure it as you draw it across, and it just makes it simple. It's not an expensive tool, but the idea is, we've gotten hundreds of them out there, probably thousands at this point. But the idea is, if a shop doesn't have the tool, they won't do the job. But if you can get them the tool and raise the awareness, they'll do the inspection, and we'll be saving lives. We'll be saving money because you won't be sending out an alternator if that's not your problem. And in fact,
let's think that through so there's a lot of Cirrus owners out there. There's a lot of people flying these engines.
Cirrus owners, anyone who flies a Beechcraft.
Yep. Anyone. Yeah. Juan here owns a 206. I mean, the engine is out there. I want people to know that a service bulletin is not regulatory. I was a little surprised, to hear you say that there is a service bulletin, that this stuff should be inspected, but that shops are not obligated to comply with it or look at it, or
True.
What is it? It's just suggestion.
Well, you've got several things. So you've got the maintenance manual and what you're supposed to do that's written in the engine maintenance manual. You've got the maintenance manual for the aircraft. And then, as you mentioned, you've got service bulletins. And for Part 91 operators, service bulletins, as opposed to airworthiness directives, are optional. They're recommended. And this is one that's really, really critical, I think, to do. What I have found, which is mind-boggling to me, is it isn't so much that both owners and mechanics know about it and choose not to do it. Instead, it's one of two things. I think in many cases, for some wacky reason, they just don't know about it, even though it's been sent to them. And then the second is, because they don't have a tool that lets them do it easily, because they just sort of say, yep, I know about this. And then they read it and then they go, I don't have a tool for that. They just skip it.
Yeah.
And that's right. I mean, think about the thought process on that one. That's not a good reason.
Yeah.
So
now people can explicitly ask their mechanics to take a look at the alternator coupling.
Yes. Inspect my alternator and inspect my alternator coupling. And what's interesting is we've sort of made it through half the equation. When I talk to most owners out there and I say to them, do they know that they should have their alternator inspected? They're like, oh yeah, absolutely. I have my alternator inspected every other annual. And then I say to them, what are you inspecting? And they're like, the alternator. They take it off, they look at the alternator, they make sure the shaft isn't wobbling or making noise. And as long as it's working well, they put it back on. Make sure it's not leaking oil, make sure blah, blah, blah. And I asked them about the coupling and they're like, I'm sorry, what? What's a coupling? And I have the same discussion with mechanics, believe it or not.
Yeah.
More mechanics than not that I talk to, more than 50% that I talk to, will remove the alternator, will visually just look at things and put it back on.
Wow. So people can also now tell literally tell their mechanic there is a tool available to measure the torque on the alternator coupling.
Yes, with not expensive. Like I said, go to approachaviation.com. It's been available for years. It's available directly through us at approachaviation.com. It's also available on Aircraft Spruce. There's some other sources out there, even sources like the folks that sell and make the alternators. Hartzell Engine Technologies, HET, that makes the alternators, sells this tool.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's great.
And like I said, it's it's basically just two things. We grab the base, we grab that, and
then use a standard torque wrench there. Okay.
We just want to, you want to save lives, you want to save money. That's my passion.
Yeah. Well, that's great, Jeff. I really appreciate you bringing this to our attention. And, like we've said, this is something that we are taught from day one, are two completely separate systems for redundancy. And it's, hopefully, we don't know what happened in the case of this Cirrus, but it's a tragedy, and it's tragic to think that something like this could have contributed potentially to it. So for other people out there flying with this engine, now we know, take it to your mechanic, tell them to comply with the service bulletin, inspect the alternator coupling, and we know where a tool exists if you don't have one. So
yeah, and please, 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 the biggest message for pilots out there who fly a Continental engine with geared alternators, please, if you are having an electrical problem, please consider that an emergency. Please land the aircraft. It can be a difference between this working exactly as designed, no damage to anything, and everything working out wonderfully, to you basically abusing your safety net until it fails.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for being here. I know that we've got some talks coming up at Oshkosh, and I look forward to being a part of Social Flight Live. Everyone should check out the Social Flight app. And thanks for being here.
I appreciate that. Thank you so, so much. Again, it's socialflight.com for Social Flight and approachaviation.com. And thank you for everything that you do, Jason. I really appreciate it. And man, am I excited to be on stage with you at the AOPA tent at Oshkosh.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it also. All right, aviators, I hope I see you at the big show. If you go to Instagram or Facebook, you can see my published schedule for all the talks I'm doing. Remember, if you start a free 2-week trial before the end of the month, you'll be entered to win a free iPad with Ground School loaded for life. If I'm talking at Oshkosh and you can make it, I truly hope to see you there. It's going to be an amazing year. I'll see you at the big show.